here to tell you how I failed. I failed to achieve my 2021 New Year's resolutions, and I'm going to talk about why I don't set New Year's resolutions anymore. Before we get into what I'm doing instead, I just wanted to share a little bit from my journal for some examples of things that I thought I would do but didn't end up doing. Alright, so I got my journal in front of me here where I wrote down this year's New Year's resolutions, and it actually made me laugh quite a bit just because of how ironic it was. The first thing on here was write in this journal at least once a week. The ironic part is that this entry was the last entry that I wrote in this year. Basically, I wrote this on my New Year's resolutions and never revisited it again, never thought about it again, just put away my journal. So the second thing that I have here is learn a new passion activity, such as editing music, starting a YouTube channel, painting a full canvas. Mind you, it's a full canvas, not just a partial canvas or a small canvas. I was a very ambitious person. Mastering the ukulele. So these are all very ambitious goals for myself. And I would say I did not do any of these besides starting a YouTube channel, which I finally got around to on the last 2 days of this year. So there's that. I'll give myself a pat on the back. And the third thing that I wrote here was do this every day. Exercise 30 minutes at least. Read or play music. Have me time. Writing in journal, be thankful for something in that day. I could confidently say that I didn't exercise 30 minutes per day or read or play music, nor did I write in this journal as I mentioned before. So that was just kind of a failure to just expect me to be at my optimal state every day. It's just not very realistic. And the last thing is spend at least 1 day a week with limited access to social media. Yeah, I don't think I was aware enough every week to just have a day with no social media, especially since after working a full week, that weekend is kind of my time to just be a degenerate and go on social media. So that did not happen at all. All right, so basically I've concluded that I was a failure this year. What exactly went wrong with my New Year's resolutions? Why do I keep failing time after time to achieve those goals? Was I just particularly unmotivated or lazy or forgetful of my goals? I also did some research about the science behind it. And I realized that my New Year's resolutions had all of the traits that made New Year's resolutions not effective. Now I'm going to go into the top 4 reasons that New Year's resolutions aren't very effective and why I won't be making them again this year. Instead, I will be creating action blueprints. First, I'm going to highlight some of the flaws of New Year's resolutions and then talk about why action blueprints are different. Number 1, my New Year's resolutions were too ambitious. I had all these lofty goals that I put down as my New Year's resolutions, and I think I treated my New Year's resolutions almost as New Year's wishes. Almost as if I believed that if I wrote them down in my journal, they would magically come true by some sort of magic voodoo that comes from it being New Year's. And while writing down goals is generally a good idea, it's not effective to have super ambitious goals. So for example, one of my goals from my New Year's resolutions for 2021 was reading 15 books. Now that might not be a lot, but it's a number that cannot be easily tracked throughout the year. An action blueprint, on the other hand, allows you to define your goals in smaller pieces. So instead of having a lofty, ambitious goal of reading 15 books, why not just read at least 10 pages per week? I find that when I start reading 10 pages per week, it's simply the act of even finding a book and opening a book that gets me into the zone of reading. It's all about the routines. Oftentimes when I find that I'm 10 pages in, if it's a book that I'm really interested in, I'm going to keep going. So ultimately you find yourself just reading a lot more than 10 pages. Now, the second reason of why New Year's resolutions are not very effective are that they are often too vague. I spend so much time thinking about what I want to change in my life for New Year's resolutions that I forget to even make a plan for them. Instead, I spend all my energy just writing down all the different things that I want to change. And remember, a resolution is only a decision, not a plan. The reason why I prefer using action blueprints is because it encourages you to actually have a series of steps to achieve each goal. For example, one of my goals for the past few years have always been to start a YouTube channel and start just putting my creative ideas out there. But within the last 3 days of starting a YouTube channel, I quickly realized that there's a lot that goes into creating a YouTube channel and just creating YouTube videos. So to make the plan more specific and less vague, I've decided to set a goal of making a YouTube video every single week. I've also created a production schedule for writing down my ideas, filming, and then editing those videos, so that even when I get caught up in my everyday work grind for my full-time job, I could still have a schedule that I can stick to create YouTube videos consistently. So the third reason why New Year's resolutions often fail is because people rely too much on their own willpower to get them to whatever goal that they've set for themselves. However, setting up an environment to achieve those goals is a key to success, because exercising that willpower is not something that is always reliable. I often get into ruts where I really don't feel like doing anything, especially after a long week of work. I know that when the new year begins, I'm gonna go back to my full-time job and just forget all about the New Year's resolutions that I already made that year. After all, it happened with this journal. I never wrote an entry in this journal after I wrote my New Year's resolutions. Making an action blueprint mitigates this need for willpower. An action blueprint actually has a set structure for how you're going to achieve those goals. It requires you to prepare in advance for those goals. So for example, one of my goals this year is to exercise every single week. Not every single day, because as we said, we don't want too ambitious of goals. Now to achieve this, I prepared for it in my action blueprint in a way that does not allow me to exercise any willpower at all. What I did is purchase this pretty expensive Soul Cycle pass that gives me 3 months worth of classes that can only be used in the next 3 months. So that means I have to drag myself to the gym every week, or I'm just going to lose that money completely. You're basically disciplining your future self into doing what you think they might not want to do in the future, so you could thank your former self later. With a broken down specific and non-negotiable action blueprint, this will also help you tackle the fourth flaw of New Year's resolution, which is the lack of accountability or social support from your community. If you can't even remember your New Year's resolutions because you either have too many, they're too vague, or they're too ambitious, how can you expect anyone else from your circle to remember them, much less track them? When you are not accountable to anyone else, you simply won't follow through because nobody will know.
How would they know?
Because you have an action blueprint that has very specific steps to achieving very minuscule goals, it's much easier for people to remember what you're trying to achieve. And that's why I'm telling you, the viewer, that I am committing to making a video a week over the next year. If telling the entire world isn't accountability, then I don't know what is. To round everything off, the best part about action blueprints is that they're not tied to New Year's. You can literally make these blueprints whenever you feel like you have to make a change in your life for the better. This encourages you to keep growing throughout the year instead of procrastinating and waiting until the next New Year's to follow through on your goals. There's just no excuses for waiting. Your goals wait for nobody. So make those action blueprints now. I hope these tips helped, and if you ended up using any of them, please comment them down below and stay tuned for the next video. All right, bye.